Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, a show about writing and publishing with your host, J.F. Garrard.
Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven. I'm your host, J.F. Garrard, and today we have our guest, Josh Williams. He's the comedian, producer, and Simpleton on the podcasting path to Enlightenment. Josh showed he was a natural when it came to the business of making people laugh by getting fired from dozens of jobs in his early 20s, and by beginning his comedy career with a Canadian Comedy Award nomination for Best Stand-up Newcomer. Delight in his wild, irrelevant, and hilarious jokes at relationships, parenting, and everyday life in ways that leave audience howling with laughter. His wit is quick, sharp, and confident, with a deft, self-deprecating touch that lets his audience know he is having as much fun with them as they are with him. So welcome, Josh.
I love it. I love how irreverent went to irrelevant.
Oh, like, sorry.
No, that's okay. It's
equally, stuff. How's it going?
And you're like self-deprecating. I'm like self-deprecating. That's okay. But it's funny. I think that's actually funnier because it's probably more accurate.
Part of it is because I grew up reading a lot of books. Like, I don't necessarily hear people say the words, so then I just assume they're whatever. And I see my son doing that now, and I'm like, oh gosh.
It's so funny too because somebody else wrote my bio for me because and it's weird for me to just sit here and like listen to praise and stuff of myself. So I'm like, ugh. But it's just funny. Yeah, someone else wrote like, can you write my bio for me? I can't think of nice things to say about myself.
Oh my gosh. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how come you decided to become a comedian? Like, how did you get to this point?
Wow. Okay. Well, I've always liked making people laugh. I've always been a fan of stand-up comedy, but I never wanted to be a comic. I'm the last person in my life that ever wanted me to be a comedian. My mother from a young age was like, oh, you're so funny, you should be a stand-up comedian. And I was just one of those people who thought that like being funny and being a stand-up comedian were not the same thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like clowns are not stand-up comics. They're making children laugh and stuff, but that's not stand-up comedy. It's kind of like performance, whatever. So I didn't see how like making a group of my friends laugh was the same as like, I basically thought like, sure, I can be funny if somebody says something and I play off of that, sure. Or my friends who know me and I do something silly, whatever, like I can make them laugh. But I'm like, can I walk up in front of a room full of people who don't know me, who aren't feeding me lines and just make them laugh? And I thought, no, that's not what I can do. Luckily, I can. Thank the good Lord. There's a lot of people who really want to do it and can't, which is sad. But I've seen it firsthand, right? You see someone, that's their first time tonight doing an amateur night or something. You're like, oh God, I really hope they have something else to fall back on. But for me, it was just, I didn't want to. And then there was a period of my life, I guess, where I was a little depressed. I was having a health scare that I didn't tell anyone about. And I think it was just, it took me years to realize this. At the time, I just thought my friends pressured me into it. But there was a period of time where like almost every night I was going to a comedy show. Mm-hmm. I was working a day job I didn't love. I was making good money, but I was just so unhappy. And I think part of me thought that I had something wrong with me health-wise that like was the end. I didn't recognize that until years later. But I was like, I think I was using the comedy as an escape. And that was the moment where one of the comics was like, hey, I'm seeing you guys, me and my group of friends, we're seeing you guys at shows a lot. Are you guys thinking of trying stand up? And all my friends were like, we want Josh to do it. We want Josh to do it. And eventually he was like, well, I run this little open mic. Maybe you should come and try. So I got like a date a month in advance. And it was like, there was enough people twisting my arm that I'm fine. I'll go do this amateur thing. And that's how it started. But even then I was apprehensive and reluctant to do it.
Was it really scary to get up there for the first time and sort of tell your story? Or like, what was the audience like for your first night there?
First night, it was in, unfortunately the place is shut down now, but it was at the Royal Oak on Laurier Street. There was a basement room that they had there that could hold about 40 people. And most of the time that open mic held about 9 people, mostly comics. But on that night, you know, so many people of my life that were encouraging that I try to get together with a few different, you know, I invited some people there for my first time. And they strategically put me on right before the last comic because and these are all things I've learned since being in the business, but historically people will come to see you and then promptly leave after your set. So in order to keep the audience there for the entire show, they put me on second to last. Very smart. Yeah, I mean, it was I can't. I have the footage of my first time. I can't watch it. I tried to play it for my girlfriend one time. I had
Like
to
your
shut it off.
wedding.
And I can't watch it. It's awful. It's awful. It's not. It went well, but like, oh god, like from where I was to where I am now, you're just like, oh dude, what are you doing? I don't know. I can't watch it. I haven't. I put the audio on a special edition of my podcast. I have the stack of boxes behind me. I had some collector's editions boxes that I did in honor of my 200th episode, which was 10 episodes ago or whatever.
Mhm.
And my listeners bought these boxes. And in that special edition, there's these little USB drives that are included. So little USB drives.
Wow,
Like a
that was
credit
really
card.
nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a credit card with a little sliding USB drive. On that USB drive is an exclusive episode for just people who bought the box. And on that episode is the audio from my very first time,
Ooh,
which I
very
didn't even listen
cool.
to when I put it on there. There, not listening, not listening.
Now, I know you live in Ottawa, so is it an ideal place to start as a comedian?
It's a really good comedy scene in Ottawa in terms of the talent pool. I don't know what it is about Ottawa. Ottawa breeds some really great, funny people. Not all necessarily stand-up comedians, but I mean, Dan Aykroyd is from Ottawa. Norm Macdonald is from Ottawa. Jeremy Hotz, John Doerr, Tom Green. A lot of really, and Mike McDonald, the late Mike McDonald. A lot of really good Josh Williams. A lot of great comedians have come from Ottawa. Ottawa's a great place to start. It's very supportive comedy community. It's like anything else that's competitive. There's still the it's one of those places where when you're all at the beginning, it's all very warm, which is nice.
Of
There's
course.
places where it's competitive right from the get-go, but it's one
Yeah.
of those scenes where even though it's warm at the beginning, as soon as somebody starts to pull ahead of the pack, you feel the animosity and
Daggers.
the negative. Yeah, and everyone's like, oh, can you believe he's getting to, it's like, but I always tell the new guys, I'm like, once you start to feel all of your friends kind of turning on you, as
Mhm.
much as it sucks, it's a
Yeah.
good sign. It means that you're starting to make it.
That means you're doing well.
Everyone loves you when you're not a threat. You know what I mean?
Oh my god. Oh gosh. So after your first sort of I guess stand-up routine, then how did like what happened next? Like you find an agent? Like how does it work? How do you pitch yourself
I
out?
still don't have any. I kind of do, I guess.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. It's stand-up comedy works like it's like a series of time. How much time do you have? So a lot of people go like, how do you get on late night or have like a Comedy Central special or something? The idea that with stand-up is when you're new, you end up doing open mics and things like that, and the amateur night at the comedy club. So in Ottawa, there's Yuck Yucks and Absolute Comedy, and both of them, when they're open, of course, have amateur nights on Wednesdays. That's when I started. There was Wednesday nights at Yuck Yucks and Wednesday night at Absolute Comedy, and you couldn't get on every Wednesday night. You were lucky; like every month they would book, so you'd email in. You didn't have to audition or anything. It was just like, I want a spot. I get 6 minutes on stage. There were 100 and some comics and only 36 spots at the club. So you were lucky if you got on every month. You were lucky. And that's like one spot a month, right? If you got on both clubs in a month, you're like, oh my God, I just doubled my stage time in a month. I get to perform for 12 minutes this month. The thing that we always have to tell people is imagine if you went to the gym and you worked out twice for 6 minutes a month. Like how long is it going to take for that muscle to get strong only doing it, X amount of time? So you'd have to either find an open mic that had a spot or build your own open mic, approach a venue and say like, hey, can I run a show here once a month or once a week? And anyways, a lot of basically was like I remember driving to Montreal to try to do that, like a comedy club's open mic there, which may get canceled if there wasn't enough people. You know what I mean? Like performing for 7 people or whatever. So like you're trying to get stage time, and the whole idea is like, I'm just trying to keep working at the 6 minutes. Some open mics, I did a room in Los Angeles a few years ago, where I'm who am I from Canada? I got my name and who I am got me a spot on the show, but the show was still just a showcase of 3-minute sets. My friend DJ Demers, who's done America's Got Talent, was also on that show. He got 3 minutes. So you're doing shows at like different pacings, whatever, but it's all about time. So the short answer, I guess, for a stand-up comic when you're new is that like you get 6 minutes, on an amateur show, and you better do well with it, right? So the idea with developing as a comic is you basically do 6 minutes and have the owner see it do well. And then the next time you're on, you do 6 minutes and have the owner seem well. When you're new and you're doing a lot of the same shows as other comedians, you start to get this mentality like, well, I don't want to keep doing the same jokes because all my peers are going to think that I'm lazy or that I don't have more than 6 minutes. The issue is that you have to keep doing that same 6 minutes because you're in front of different audiences and different people. And the only way to know that this material works consistently is to do it consistently and make sure that it works. Because what a club owner is looking for is like, okay, I've seen this guy perform this set 4 times. It works every time. Let's give him a shot as an opener on a weekend. You might not even get paid for it. You might just get that opening 6-minute spot. So now that there's a paying audience expecting a pro show, right? Like if you go to an amateur show, your expectations are amateur comedy. But now that you're paying $20 a ticket and this is an all pro show, a general pro lineup in Canada is like your host, opening act, middle act, and then headliner. Right. And of course, doing more time with each spot, right? 6-minute opener, 20-minute middle, 45-minute headliner. So when you get an opportunity to do a weekend, now you're performing in front of a crowd that has higher expectations. So will your material that you did hold up? And you're getting to do it. The nice thing is you're doing it a little more consistently because now you're doing like Thursday, Friday, usually 2 shows Friday, 2 shows Saturday, a Sunday night show. So now I get to perform my 6 minutes 6 days in a row. You know what I mean? Like I've never been able to do that. I get like a spot here or there. So to be able to do it, and on that Friday show where you do an early show and then you're doing it again in a late show, to be able to try something out. And if something didn't quite work, you can adjust and literally try it again, an hour and a half from now is unbelievable. So you're banking time. That's really kind of how stand-up works. If you do that weekend and it goes well, you're like, great, I got 6 minutes that I know works. Bank it, back to amateur nights, work on another 6 minutes. You know what I mean? Go through that process again, and then all right, I got that bank. Now I got 12 minutes. Bank another 6. Well, now I got 18 with a little bit of stuff I peppered in here. Maybe now I'll get an opportunity to be a feature act because I got 20 minutes that I can do. But you always want a surplus, right? Like if someone says, like, that's the question that most bookers will ask you: how much time do you have? You know what I mean? And the good idea is to always have more than what you're asked for. So in order to be a good middle, they're going to ask you to do 20 minutes. Well, you should have a good 30 minutes of A material. That's the thing too. People say how much A material you have, how much B material, but it's just time. And of course, to bank these chunks of time, it's not like 2 weeks I'll work on that. It's like I said, you get 1-2 spots a month. It's a long time before those club owners have seen those things work consistently. So it can take years, but like everything else in our society nowadays, everybody wants I want to be an instant overnight YouTube sensation because I put out one video that went viral. It's like, you got to have that patience to be like, it's a process. I'm building a body of work, and of course, the more popular you get, the more stuff works. Then you can, once you're doing these middle spots, you can throw a new joke in. You can workshop new stuff in a longer set because you've got strong stuff that'll bookend it. So you get opportunities to work in new stuff as opposed to just trying it out in amateur nights and stuff. But that's what you see from guys like Jerry Seinfeld and Chris Rock and Louis C.K. and Dave Attell. Dave Attell and Dave Chappelle, where they'll just jump in and do a spot at a comedy club in New York and they just do like a little 5-10 minute spot.
Practicing.
Exactly. I got a new idea. I want to see if it's funny. I go in and work it out, and there it is now. You know what I mean? Like, okay, it worked or it didn't. Like I've watched pros, big names in these cities. Oh, they had a new idea. It wasn't funny, but they're not testing that stuff out on a special. They're testing it out live when the cameras aren't on.
Well, I'm sure even the pros, like you say, like they get out of practice, right? Like if they have something new, they want to see if it works or not before they do their Netflix special to earn their millions. So
Netflix had signed some deal. I don't know if they signed the deal, but they were in talks with Eddie Murphy to be the place that does his next special because he's going to come out of retirement and do a special. Guy hasn't done stand-up in 30 years.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
In a while.
He's gonna be rusty. I watched Ray Romano put in a special.
Oh yeah, he was that What's About Raven? Is that Raymond show? Or
something about Raven.
Something about Raven. Yeah.
Everybody loves Raymond.
Everyone loves Raymond. Something about Raymond.
Everybody loves Raymond. And he was a stand-up, and he's a good stand-up comic. He was really good. I watched all of his Just for Laughs stuff, whatever. And he was a good comic. He just put in a special. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's been years since he's done it. And it was kind of like, oh, you've been a while. And then Eddie Murphy's like 30 years. He did an episode of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee with Seinfeld, and he was talking about how like, he'd like to do it again, but he's scared of the idea of going back. So it's like, yeah, he had talent and he's a funny actor,
Mhm.
but that's not the same as stand-up. Whereas guys like Robin Williams,
Oh, I love Robin
did
Williams.
movies and stuff and still did stand-up. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Continued to
Yeah.
do stand-up comedy. So
Yeah.
Jim Carrey, great stand-up comic.
Yeah.
Got into movies, never did it again. Michael Keaton was a stand-up comic.
Yes, he was. Until Batman. I remember like reading about how no one believed he could be Batman and stuff like that. And he
Well,
pulled it off.
I watched the Comedy Store documentary on Showtime, which is great if anyone wants kind of an idea of stand-up, whatever. But it showed Michael Keaton doing his stand-up and stuff, and then he started to get like some roles in some little comedy movies, whatever. But he got hired by Tim Burton to be Beetlejuice.
Oh yes.
So he played Beetlejuice, and that was a funny sort of goofy role. But I think because he worked with Tim Burton on Beetlejuice, when Tim Burton was doing Batman, it was kind of like, let's, you know what I mean? Like he may never, but it was kind of like that showed that this guy can be an actor. You know what I mean? There was other things too, but yeah, for years it's like, oh, he was a comedian? Shit, I didn't know that. You know, but that's where he started.
I think it's very hard to come up with jokes to make people laugh. Like seriously, like people think it's easy, but I think when you actually are on stage and you tell the story, it looks easy. But I think coming up with the material, I'm guessing, is quite. Is it difficult for you or no? You're giving me that look.
So here's the thing with stand-up comedy. Coming up with it is the easy part, I think. Because here's the thing, people wouldn't laugh at our jokes if they didn't understand, if they couldn't relate and understand it. So the idea is that everybody thinks of the funny thing. Just the vast majority of people, something comes in their head, they laugh at it. Let's go, or a situation happens, they laugh at it, and then that's it. They've forgotten about it. Whereas a comic learns to go, that's funny, I'm going to hang on to that and then showcase it. Because I tell people this all the time. I don't know if everyone has the capacity to be a stand-up comic, but everyone has the capacity to be funny, because everybody has had that moment. They're like, oh my God, the funniest thing happened today, and then they tell you the story. And then at the end, no one laughs. They go, oh, I guess you had to be there. And I always say, no, it's not that I had to be there. It's that you didn't do a good enough job explaining to us what you found funny in that situation. Because the job of a stand-up comedian is not to come up with the funny. The funny is there. Our job is to make it relatable. Like, I found this funny. Now let me explain to you why I found that funny, which is why in stand-up comedy, there's so many similes and metaphors, right? Like, oh, this happened the other day, not laughing. That's like, and then they give an example and then everyone laughs because now they understand what they found funny about that situation. Like, for example, my friend, this is a small example, and I hope it's not too inappropriate, but my friend Dan Shackey in New York had this joke about how, why is it okay for gay guys to touch women's breasts? They've got these girlfriends and they're allowed to touch their breasts. Why? Because they don't care? You know what I mean? It's like, it's okay if they did it. Like, why? Because that's ridiculous to me. Like, why is it okay? That's like me going up to somebody and putting my hands around their neck and going, oh, I can do this. I'm not a murderer. I'm not a murderer. I just want all the murderers in the room to be jealous. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So it's like, you don't get what he's saying until he uses the metaphor of like, oh, I just want the murderers to be jealous because I can do it and they can't. Like, so it's little things like that. Things happen in life all the time. Jeff Foxworthy was saying that too. It's just like comedians learn to like grab that thing and we polish it and we turn it over and go, hey, everybody, what about this? And then everyone laughs because everybody in that moment goes, I've thought that same thing. You know what I mean? So we don't come up, some of us do. There are little clever things that we come up with at times, but I think that the most work for stand-up comedy is, I've got this idea that I think is funny. Now, how do I explain to everybody else what I found funny about it? That's the work of a comic. So, I've got all sorts of notes and ideas and things like this written on my desk that I'm like, I think it's hilarious, but I don't know how to explain it yet.
Yeah, there's a little post-it all over the place.
Oh yeah, like I just, as a small, I'll give you one right off my thing here. I've got one where I talk about pitting my insecurities against myself, or my flaws. Sorry, pitting my flaws against themselves, right? Like my insecurity versus my laziness. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so insecure about how I look, but I'm too lazy to go work out. So it's like, which one's gonna win? Like, just like, but that's in and of it. So that's just kind of the idea so far. but it's not a ton of, I just think it's funny where I'm like, oh, you know, I should work out. I really don't like how I look and how I, you know, I'm overweight and and I'm like, yeah, but I don't really feel like, you know what I
It's
mean?
okay. You can just print out a 6-pack, 3D 6-pack, and just put it
Yeah,
on.
exactly. I'll get a real convincing t-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just funny, you know.
But depends. Like if you want to be an actor, and I think for acting, you're selling your body and your acting abilities, then I think, you know, your physical appearance is probably more important because it depends on the role. Like if you're going to be a superhero, right, then you're going to have to get those 6-pack. But if you're not, you know, then it's okay.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, I don't like, a lot of people will use stand-up comedy as a stepping stone to something else. That's not my end game.
Mhm.
In fact, you're seeing a lot of celebrities prior to the pandemic. A lot of everything I'm talking about is prior to the pandemic, just to preface it. But celebrities starting to do stand-up comedy just to try to be relevant again and to try to be seen out doing
Mhm.
things and be talked about. But it's just it's not, you know, they're using it as a platform to get, there's a lot of new people who nobody knows.
Mhm.
Just I want to get into stand-up comedy because I figure maybe it'll help me propel into acting or
Yeah.
something. It's like, I like doing stand-up comedy because I like doing stand-up comedy. If something
Yeah.
else comes from, I've got acting gigs and stuff, but I want to do stand-up comedy. That's what I want to do. That's what I like.
So, what is it your day-to-day like? Like this is your full-time gig. So I'm just curious, like, do you spend half the time writing or do you go around making
Wish I
fun of
did.
people?
I wish I did.
Okay.
I can lie to your audience and talk about this great work ethic that I have.
Actually, you have an article with the Ottawa Sun or something about driving Uber, so you know your cover's already blown. So
If you Google Josh Williams comedian, the amount of people have said like, oh yeah, we're trying to find a bio or something. We found your Uber article. I'm like, I'm
yeah.
more famous for being an Uber driver in Ottawa, which I haven't done in like more than 2 years. You know, and I'm like, so that's what I'm known for. I'm they call it, I think they said the comedy cab or whatever. I'm like, oh, for the love of God, like that's. I was trying to, I did that article because Uber was trying to get regulated. This was before they were
Yeah.
regulated. They were trying to get regulated in Ottawa. And I went to speak for them on, you know, they asked me like, hey, you know, you're charismatic and articulate. Come speak at City Hall on our behalf. And I sat there all day long and I had to do a show in Montreal that night. And all day they hadn't called on any of the Uber drivers. So they actually let me go. I had to leave without ever speaking. So I never even did what they wanted me to do.
Mhm.
But that article still existed as like,
Yeah,
hey,
because
you
I
want
was
to
trying
follow
to
on
find
one of
your
our
bio.
drivers?
I was trying to find your bio, and I was like, oh, he's an Uber driver. But it's
Unbelievable.
okay. When you Google
Unbelievable.
me, you'll find an article about Presto Machine overcharging me.
Oh,
So
really?
there's my like 15 seconds of fame.
It's
Yeah.
like the internet just trying to destroy us. You do that little ego search and it's like, you were this. For me, it would just be me like one of those horrible stock footage, like a fat guy outside a hot dog cart, and it's the hot dogs falling out of the bun, and it's like, that's my public shot. And it's comedian Josh Williams seen here. I'm like, I didn't even do that. How did they make that happen?
Oh my
The
god.
stock photo is just something horrible.
But you have a podcast. So your one-man show. So
I
why did you
do.
decide to do your giant, well, you know, it's a podcast with hundreds of episodes and lots of thousands of followers. So, you know, everyone should go listen to it. But
Well, you know, I woke up one day and read my horoscope, and it's like, today, girl, you are going to start a podcast.
yeah.
Um, I worked with a comedian that I like and have a ton of respect for, and who's now a dear friend. My friend Paul Verzi, he has a podcast. He's the guy who opens for Bill Burr. If you don't know who Bill Burr is, I can't help you. He's probably one of the biggest working comics in the world right now. He's the creator of F is for Family on Netflix, which just coincidentally, it's written and everything in Los Angeles, and it's animated right here in Ottawa at a company called Big Jump.
Cool.
Yeah, so I've got friends who work on that show. So I was working with Verzi, and we happened to be in Ottawa doing shows, and after every show people would approach him. He had never done comedy clubs in Ottawa before. He had done theaters opening for Burr in Canada before, but had never done comedy clubs in Canada. I brought him up here. We worked together for the week. And after every show, people were coming up saying, hey, we heard on the podcast that you were going to be here. So they didn't know anything about Absolute Comedy, or they weren't like, hey, we just came. They came because they heard on his podcast that he was going to be there. A guy who'd never performed in Canada in comedy clubs.
Wow.
And I was like, this is crazy. And then we worked together in Toronto a few months later. same thing. People were coming to see a show because they heard the podcast. People were coming from out of town who'd never ever heard of the comedy club. Just, we heard you were going to be here. We went and bought tickets. Here we are. We listened to your podcast. And he was just saying to me, he's like, dude, any comic who's doing a stand-up comedy right now who's not doing a podcast is wasting a big opportunity, because there's fans that want to know what's going on with you. They like you. They connect with you, and they'll come see you once a year when you're in town. But the ones who listen to your podcast, it's like they're with you every week, and they're invested in who you are as a person, and they like hearing what's going on with you. They feel like they're getting the inside scoop with somebody that they really like. And so I just, after those weeks, just wanted, like, this guy doesn't even live here, and look at the crowd that he's drawing just from his podcast. So I was like, I felt late to the party 4 years ago. Just last week was the 4-year anniversary of my podcast.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. That's very kind.
If I was in Ottawa, I'd bake you a cake, but I'm not.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Next time I come to Ottawa.
Fair. I will definitely let you know when I'm coming to Toronto. I'll be like,
okay. Cool.
I love baking. I can't do it myself, but not to give you a task. Normally I would say, oh, that's not necessary, but baking, I'm like, all right. But yeah, 4 years, I was like, wow, it hasn't seemed that long. But I decided to start it, and I got the advice from them to do a single person podcast. Because I was like, yeah, I don't really know. Like, I would like to do the same thing as you guys, where it's just kind of giving the fans the inside scoop. You know, it's kind of like, honestly, the best way to describe it is it's sort of like my public journal. You know what I mean? Here's what's going on with me personally, professionally, things I'm working on, things that are upsetting, things that are, I'm celebrating, whatever it is. Even just dumb thoughts that I'm having that week. Hey guys, what do you think? Wouldn't this be a funny kind of, but they encouraged me to, Paul and also Burr, in a different conversation, encouraged me to do a podcast with just one person, because they said that way you're not handcuffed to anybody else's schedule. It's easier to kind of do it wherever you are, because it's less equipment to bring. And then if you have a guest, it's a pleasant surprise, not an expectation. So people have given me crap for why is it called the one man podcast? And then you've got these bonus episodes and you've got guests sometimes. I'm like, the one man is me. That's that's what we're going to be talking about in the regular episodes. And then if I have a bonus episode, that one man or woman is that person. That's what it means. But it's just, I was just surprised. I didn't know it. I'm like, what do I call this one man podcast? And then I do what I always do, is when I come up with an idea for a name, is I Google the URL to see if it's available. And onemanpodcast.com was available. So I was like, and easy decision. So, and it's easy to remember when someone's like, what's the name of your podcast? One Man Podcast. Easy, very, very easy.
Cool. And I know you use Podbean. I guess you record your episodes, you do your editing, and you upload all by yourself.
I do. I spent a month prior to my first episode, like, meticulously. Like, I have anxiety. I didn't think I did for most of my life, because to me, anxiety meant like panic attacks. And I don't get panic attacks. I'm just in a constant state of unease. Like, something wrong could happen. And if I don't have every I dotted and T crossed and everything is all set, and I don't understand the process start to finish immaculately, then I'm going to make a mistake and I'm going to mess up. So I just remember, like, I was watching YouTube videos and I'm like, okay, I bought the recorder that I saw in a video, because the person was saying, like, hey, if you record on a recorder, and make sure you use headphones, because, sometimes people will try to record on Skype or record on Zoom, and, and you can hear the person, but what you don't realize is your recording software in the background stopped recording the audio halfway through. And because you couldn't hear it, you didn't know it happened, and da-da-da. So all these different things, I bought all the stuff I was told to, and I followed the setup to the letter. And, I just made sure I'm not a very techie guy. So I'm like, I need to know everything that was there. And what's an RSS feed? And I couldn't seem to get a straight answer of what the hell an RSS feed, but if you go with Podbean, which was what Verzi used, he recommended, and I'm like, good enough. I don't know why I need to go shop the market when you do it and you say it's easy. You hit record and then save. Cool. So I record on a recorder, and it's quite literally like dragging and dropping a file onto my computer afterwards. Initially, I bought like apps and things on my phone, because I didn't want to have to do any post-production. The idea of doing post-production was scary to me. So I have intro music that I have from a Juno Award winning blues band, Monkey Junk. I went to high school, Glebe, with
Glebe
Steve
seems to
Mariner.
produce a lot of producers and a lot of famous musicians.
Yeah.
Like Alanis is from there and stuff.
Yeah, Alanis went to Glebe. Tom Cruise did a year at Lisgar.
What?
Yeah, Tom Cruise did a year at Lisgar, our
Okay.
rival.
Okay.
But yeah, Steve Mariner, lead singer of Monkey Junk, I reached out to them. I was like, you guys are great. Do you guys have any like music that I would be able to use? Like, oh, there's a song I'd love to. They said, yes, I've got the license for it. Amazing band. So I took like the music and I took kind of like the setup, and I imported all these files onto my iPad. Like this, I think the app was called iJingle, and it would just be like buttons on the iPad. So I would like set up the iPad with a cord that was plugged into the recorder. My microphone was plugged in the recorder. And so what I would do is just literally like I'd hit record on the recorder, tap the intro music, it plays, hey, it's me, yada, 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 yada. And then at the end, tap the rest of the song to outro. And I would just wait for it to finish. And then I'd hit stop on the recorder. And then there'd be like a one mix down button. And now the file's all there, all the sound effects. I had partners with the Uncle John's bathroom readers, which I worked on editing a little toilet flush sound. So that before I read it, it was like, hey, Uncle John's bathroom reader. But I would tap the thing. I would tap any ad that I had made or whatever, so that it was like I didn't have to go in and do post-production. But then once I started to do Auphonic, and then I had to do some episodes, like I don't even edit my podcast. Like I have only like 2 years in, maybe even longer, I learned how to hit pause on my recorder if I needed to pop and take a break or answer the phone.
Yeah.
Because before it would be like hit play, talk for an hour to 2 hours straight. Right. I'd have to constantly sip on something or drink from my coffee cup because my voice would get dry from just yak.
So after doing the podcast for so long, have you ever encountered any trolls on social media at all?
More other comedians and stuff saying
okay.
fun of the name, like, oh yes, the one man podcast where there's guests, like little just more snide remarks. There's people who posted on YouTube like, hey, I love listening to your podcast to fall asleep to. And I was like,
oh, that's mean.
I'm like, I assume they're like, no, you have a very soothing voice and you're I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I don't care if I get the view from it, fine.
Yeah.
Listen, whatever I'm doing to help you, me, it's free therapy. I talk to the wall, I get the stuff off my chest. And then if I can help you fall asleep, if I'm an ASMR type thing for you, then.
So what else are you working on right now? I guess looking for more.
Great question. Sad answer. Not much. Not much. No. It's like, what am I working on? I slowly move the knife.
Don't do that.
No, it's not. I'm doing well. I'm good. As you can see, I've got my coffee surplus here. My Nespresso capsules are well stocked, so I'm good. I'm working on really right now. The podcast is kind of my primary thing. Seeing a lot of comedians and entertainment types doing podcast. Look, I'm not on Cameo, so I'm not suffering. You know what I mean? Like, I'm seeing a lot of former actors and people of interest on Cameo. Hey, I'll say happy birthday for $5.
Yes,
I'm dying here. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I'm like, no, I'm not suffering. But I'm working on.
If I give you $10, you don't do it. No, just kidding.
Oh, I would totally do it. Absolutely. I'm just not putting it out there that I would do it on Cameo, because like, comics are the worst. Like tearing each other down. It's like, ball busting or whatever you want to call it. But there's some of it is not good natured. If you call them on it, they'll oh no, I'm just kidding. It's like, nah, I don't think you were. I think you were shitting on the effort. There's people out there. Forgive me.
There's like a line, right? Like they want to be edgy, but then there's also like you can cross it quite easily as well. So you have to be careful sometimes.
It's one of those things too where I find that there's a lot of people, like stand-up comics were self-employed, right? So the idea is that like, I can work or I can sit around and do nothing. In terms of writing stand-up, it's non-existent, only because when you get an idea for a joke and you're writing it, like it's not a joke until you've done it in front of an audience. It's just an idea. I think this is funny, but I have no way of knowing it's funny until I say it, and then it's funny. But the comedy clubs are closed, so it's hard to like put a lot. It'd be like trying to. I don't know why I always use the gym as an example. Clearly, I don't know anything about the gym, but it's like trying to create a workout plan for yourself and then being like, every day you're like, oh, I want to make it better. And that's what we did. It's like, and then there's no gym to work out in. So like, well, what's my hurry creating this workout plan if I can't work out? You know what I mean? So I'll just put it aside. What can I work on? And I'm doing interviews with the podcast and I'm reading books to review and
Yeah.
I'm watching a lot of movies. Like my podcast is, hey, here's what's happened with me this week. It quickly turned into, here's the video games I was playing and the books that I was reading and the movies and TV shows I was watching and the weird, stupid, isolated thoughts that I had. So
Okay. Yeah.
it's starting. I'm introducing some new segments that are getting a little traction with the audience. The onesies, as I call my audience.
When you say that, it reminds me of like the onesies that babies wear. Oh.
Yeah. I put it to the listeners. What do you guys want to be called? What do you guys want to be called? What's the name? Submit some ideas, and somebody submitted onesies. Somebody submitted a few things, but onesies was one of them. And I was like, I like onesies. My girlfriend and I, we used to wear onesies around the house. That was cute. She used to call me Monkey was the nickname she gave me. So she bought me a monkey onesie that had a tail and the hood with the ears and everything like that. So onesies were a cute little thing. And around the same time, it was like this in the audience, like onesies. I'm like, just that it resonated with me, but the audience also thought is very cute and adorable too. So guys submit the ideas, and then guys, here's the finalists. What do you think? And onesies was the selected one. And now I don't even think of the pajamas anymore. It's just, that's my list.
Yeah, it's just your audience, right? Yeah, when I came up with the Artsy Raven, I think one of my friends said, you're going to be the exhausted pigeon by 1 week. And I was like, very funny, but I'm okay. But all right, I think we have to wrap up. So where can people find your show and you?
You can find the podcast. It's on just about every streaming platform. I keep finding new platforms that I didn't even know existed that are carrying it for some reason. So I think that's one of the benefits of Podbean is that it will also submit it elsewhere for you. But Apple Podcasts, Spotify, I put it on YouTube, but it's just a static image, so you can hear it there. onemanpodcast.com. You can find it. Deal I have with my listeners. You can send me an email, contact@onemanpodcast.com. If you send the email, I read it on the podcast. It's as simple as that. Doesn't matter what it is. I will read it. Try not to send anything horrible or hateful. But it's still a deal. You send it, I'll read it and go, this was not me. This was this person. Try not to give a platform to the awful. But there's one that comes out every week. We just did an interview, you and I. So
yeah,
check out that episode, guys. That's available Friday. When does this one come out?
August.
August. Okay. So when this comes out, guys, her episode's already been out. It's available. So just look it up. Just Google Day After Gerard One Man Podcast. You can find it wherever you consume things.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being on the show. So I'll talk to you again soon, I hope.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, bye. For more upcoming episodes of the Artsy Raven about writing and publishing, visit us at jfgarage.com/arpodcast. A reminder to Patreon subscribers that there is bonus content available for every episode on the Patreon website. If you enjoyed the show, you can show your appreciation by buying us some digital coffee. The Artsy Raven is produced by J.F. Garrard. The voice in the show's introduction is Chris Gorman, and music is by Tim Moore. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, stay safe.